Buying books. Wayne Butler, alcoholic. I want to thank Bill and his committee for inviting me to come share with you this weekend and spend a weekend with some good friends of mine. I've seen Dave and Podley recently, but I haven't seen John for quite a while, so it's good we were catching up. Now, he whispered over to me that I've got 1 hour. Now, John told me at dinner I could have 2.5, and John's got more time. I don't care who's in charge. I'll give you a break in about 11. Drew, thank you. Would you understand if I told you we had fun getting out of the airport? Small airport. No, I want to thank Drew for picking me up and whisking me over here. And thanks for the meal and the little goodies in the basket. I love all that little bitty stuff. I like money, but that'll do. This job doesn't pay enough. Oh, by the way, if you're listening to this tape, it don't pay at all. So just get that rumor will be on the internet before I go to bed tonight. Yeah, Butler's paid for that too. We do this for fun and for free. And when he mentioned the trivia game, I got a little obsessed with AA. Just a little. I wrote 10,000 questions. It took me 5 years. I did, using every bit of our literature and our pamphlets. And it's not for sale, by the way. Don't leave here tonight and say, now he's got a game he's selling. That's for use for fun and for free in AA. But I wrote 10,000 questions and we used 54. I might have overdone it. Is there an Overdoers Anonymous? I bet there is. I'm an over-underachiever. I have a job to do tonight. It's a job that now that I'm here, I enjoy it. And for the next hour, I hope you do too, the message. I'll try to convey that. I know who my employer is. I've had the longest job I've ever had, and it's the one that pays the least financially. But I've known for 35 years who my employer is, and I'm performing his work better now than I did in the start because I was mentally and emotionally incapable of that. And that's not an excuse. It's just alcoholism takes time. It takes time to develop, and it takes time to recover. And by the grace of God, AA is a place where we have the room to grow and we have the ability to change. If you're new, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're in your first year, God bless you. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Don't judge AA according to my presentation. Don't blame AA if I'm too tall, if I'm too bald, too glib, too whatever judgment you come up with tonight, or even too good. I'm the best presentation that I can be. With my faculties that I've got left, and trying to present that in a way that will not speak to your head. I'm not a lecturer. I don't like lectures. I can't speak to your head. I'm not qualified. I hope my message will speak to where the disease is. The disease is not in my head. That is not where my problem is. My problem is not my thinking. That's been fashionable for the last 20 years. That's a symptom of the problem. If my thinking was my problem, therapy would have fixed me. It just would have. It's designed for that. Nothing wrong with that. I love that. One of the dearest friends I have is a guy by the name of Dr. Rip O'Keefe. He's a psychologist. He's actually, when I tell my story a little bit more, he was on call the 17th trip in for me. And after I got sober, he and I, not only did I work for him, we became friends. And we're still friends today. And he really helped me on the side. No charge. So I don't respond well when I'm being charged. Neither by a doctor or by a judge. I don't respond well to either one of those charges. If you're new, how many people we got in their first year by chance? Got a few? Thank you. Welcome. Okay. Where's those hideous greeters? Wearing those outfits that I haven't seen for many years. I know who that was for. Thank you. We'll share about that a little later on too. I used to drink a lot, and you know, common thought out in the earth world is if an alcoholic stops drinking, they're fine, and that's probably true for some. My brother's one of those guys that he's been sober 32 years now. He goes to one meeting a week, whether he needs it or not. I can't stand it. He bothers me, and And he thinks I've got an ego problem because I come and do this. He really, honest to God, I'd really get on his case if I didn't believe it, but he, honest to God, believes this is my ego driving me because he doesn't understand. I know my brother can't pick up so much as a thimbleful of alcohol because he'll be off and running, and he'll do dastardly things when he's drunk, and then he'll hate himself the next morning. I did those things sober, and I couldn't explain that. I did it better. I was clear-minded, so to speak. But I grew up in an alcoholic home. I'm the youngest of three. I have an elder brother, as I said. He's 65 years old. I have a middle sister. She is 30. He's 36. She's 35. Or 65, 64, and I'm 63. My sister was neurotic. Anybody who grows up in an alcoholic home is going to be neurotic. I don't care what your disposition is. But she came out of it. She joined the church. No 12 steps, no sponsors. She came out of the neurosis she was in. She was in some terrible, the same things that happened to me in my childhood happened to her. I didn't do so good. I didn't know about this thing called the disease of alcoholism. I didn't understand it. My father was an admitted alcoholic. All he drank was brown whiskey. My mother, she was not an alcoholic, but she drank heavy to keep up with my dad. She would drink tequila. Now, I swore to God when I was young I was never going to drink whiskey, that brown whiskey, because when my dad would drink brown whiskey, he would just beat the devil out of my mom. And if he got to us too. My mom, when she drank tequila, she retaliated. And she did a really good job of that. My mother was like 5 foot nothing, weighed 160 pounds, no fat, solid muscle. My mother was a wrestler. She wrestled men at the Royal American Shows carnivals that traveled to the Midwest. She could get in there and beat the bejeebers out of men. My mother was tattooed from the neck down. She had flying eagles on each forearm, and she had a double-breasted eagle across her back. Now, I remember that. I'm 63. That was 55 years ago from my memory. Now, 55 years ago, it wasn't cool and acceptable for women to have tattoos. Back then, they called you a painted lady. Well, they called her a painted lady once. I remember I was going to school and I heard someone say the B word, and I didn't know what that word meant. It wasn't in the dictionary. I wouldn't have read the dictionary anyway. But I didn't know what the word was, but I attached it, right? And I remember I got home and my mom made me mad, and that B word came out of my mouth from nowhere. And she did a maneuver on me I didn't know you could do in wrestling. It's called a body slam. My mother picked me up by the crotch and by the neck, took me over her head, and she says, "I bet you never use that word again." Boom! I have not used that word towards my mother to her face ever again. I was never going to drink. I don't know about beer and that stuff, but I know that brown whiskey and tequila is not bad. I just kind of absorbed that information. And I grew up in a really dangerous environment. My father was a truck driver. He drove for Knox Motor Service out of Chicago, Illinois. My dad was mobbed up. He ran illegal whiskey and cigarettes out of Chicago. And we moved quite often. I'm still a mover. We moved like every 4 or 5 months. We called my dad. I nicknamed him in sobriety, actually, after I heard Norm Alpe talk. I nicknamed him the Midnight Moving Man because he would back that tractor trailer up at the front porch, and we'd be moving at midnight, and there'd be bullet holes sometimes in his tractor trailer. And then the violence in the home. You know, the other truckers come over, they play poker, they get drunked up, and the guns would get pulled out. And it was just it was an interesting childhood. That did not make me alcoholic. I want to make that very clear to you. It didn't make me alcoholic, but it put a definite spin on my personalities. I may have been born with one, but they soon developed and they morphed. You got to really be alert in a home like that. You got to have about 5 or 6 eyes, making sure now they call it hypervigilant. Really? Thank you. It's like when I went to treatment, I found out I had low self-esteem. I said, "Well, thank you. I didn't think I had any. I've been in treatment 1 day and I'm doing better already." That was worth 17 grand right there. Been as bad as I thought. I also had these quirks about me that had nothing to do with my family. I want to make sure I put that out there because sometimes people get the misconception that I'm blaming my parents for the nature I was born into. I seem to have been born looking in at me. I seem to have been born self-centered. I really do. I remember being afraid as far back as my conscience will take me. I remember being afraid. And I remember not liking myself. How do you do that when you're 4 or 5 years old? How do you not like yourself? It's like, and I'm a guy who never had a problem with God. And that was my problem. I never had, and here's why. I remember out of all my families, I went to church. I love going to church. And I'm not going to get religious on you. I'm just telling you my story. I went to Mountain View Free Church. And it's the only time in my life I remember feeling at peace. And I would sit right underneath the crucifix. That's where I sat every Sunday. Nobody sat under it. That was Wayne's chair. And I sat, and you know, the whole time I sat underneath that crucifix, I couldn't tell you how I felt. I didn't have the words. But I felt safe. I felt secure. I knew that that guy they talked about loved me. I knew that. And here's the baffling part of that. I would go home and look in the mirror and hate myself. That I could not understand. There was not a doubt in my mind that character they told me about in that building on Sundays, there was not a doubt in my mind that guy loved me. Intellectually, I knew that. But down here, God, I hated myself. I hated how I looked. I hated my name. Do you know what rhymes with Wayne? Inane, mundane, insane. God, I hated my name. And I didn't want anybody calling me my name. I hated my name. And if you called me a nickname, I didn't learn how to fight. I learned how to rage. I learned how to attack. I'm not a fighter. I'm not a fighter today. I can, but I'm not. I'm not a tough guy either. I want to get that out there right now. I'm not a tough guy. I'm very sensitive. Sometimes it looks the same way. If you scare me or hurt my feelings, bad things will happen. Not because I'm a tough guy, but because something inside me does not have the equipment and the tools to let it roll off my back like so many people do. In other words, I can't just take it. If somebody takes a shot at me sarcastically, I'll cut your throat. Isn't that a loving gesture? Isn't that nice? Do you think that's an overreaction? That's what the doctor told me. You're an overreactor. I said, why don't you tell him not to say that then? They didn't seem to be interested in that guy. Now I'm in 5th grade. I'm acting out in school. I need to tell you this because so many people don't understand that there's a predisposition to this disease. They don't understand. If I start out right where I was drinking, you're not going to understand how sick I really was. You're not going to understand. You're not going to understand how powerless I really was on the inside and how I was a drink waiting to happen. I needed the effect produced by alcohol, but I didn't know that. How do you know that when you're 5? You don't know that. And I'm sure not going to drink that stuff my dad's drinking. It's not Pepsi-Cola. I drink Pepsi-Cola. Doesn't do a thing for me. So I'm going to school now and I'm eating pencils. I'm chewing on crayons. They call it acting out now. Back then they just thought you was weird. They didn't know what to do with me. And the more violent the home got, I don't mean to disparage my mom and dad. There's another book that says honor thy father and thy mother, and it doesn't say unless they treat you bad. I kept looking for that asterisk. Thank God you taught me my mom and dad weren't bad people. I got to tell you, when my mom and dad passed away, I knew they weren't bad people. I knew they were sick people. That's what I knew. Had you not given me that, I'd have hated them. And I'd have been bragging about how bad they were. But I have to tell you this. They would go on a drinking binge, and my mom worshiped the ground he walked on. She went where she just did what he did. And we had coal bins. We had coal furnaces. You know what those are, where you put coal in them, and that's where you get your heat. We didn't have any running water in the house. We had to go out and pump it out of a well. I mean, can you believe that? And we had this little TV that you could barely see what it was. And we would have to take rounds in the wintertime every 2 hours to stoke the furnace so that it wouldn't go out. Never forget that. But what they would do when they would go out is they would then lock us in those coal bins. And they would be gone for 3 or 4 or 5 days at a time. That's just the way it was. And it went downhill from there. As their alcoholism and her, I dare say, Al-Anonism, as it progressed and it affected us, that did not make me alcoholic. What makes me alcoholic is that when I ingest ethanol alcohol, in any form at all, in any amount at all, it incites this strange allergy that science can't even figure out today. It's still just a theory. We're the only ones who really buy that theory. They're out there telling us it's addictive now. Pinheads. there's all kinds of theories floating around, but the only one that makes any sense to me was it's some strange allergy coupled with this mental obsession that I'm going to find some way to just have one or two Budweisers. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But once I drink alcohol in any amount and it begins to incite that allergy in me, I get this strange craving that I can't put it down. It puts me down until I can't go anymore. That's what makes me alcoholic. I didn't know that. I'm drinking Pepsi Cola. I don't know what's going on. So then they take me to school. Now, what I'm about to tell you, if you have any kids with special needs, I'm not disrespecting them. I don't mean any disrespect. This is just my story. When I was in 8th grade, it was 1959, 1960, they came out with a test. This is 1963. They came out with an IQ test. How many of you have taken the IQ test? Come on, tell the truth. How many of you have taken the IQ test? And I know some. I can tell by the smarts that are floating above your head. They gave me that test. That's how they was trying to figure out where I was coming from. I remember taking that test. I don't understand a bit of it, but I remember it. Now, if you score over a 120, you're a pretty smart cookie, aren't you? If you score over a 150, you're called Mensa material. They will hire you and pay you to think. We got people in here that would apply for that job, and they don't have an IQ over 120, I'll tell you. If you score over a 180, stay home. You're too smart to drive your car. I want you to know what I scored. I scored a 57. And I didn't cheat. That's a fact. And they diagnosed me mentally retarded. Now, bear in mind, this is 1963. This is 50 years ago. I diagnosed mentally retarded, and I got put in the mentally retarded class. I was with some other interesting children. I now know they had Down syndrome. They didn't know what that was for sure back then. They were mentally retarded too. And I'm not going to make myself a victim in front of you. Just understand that when you're in that class, your life is going to change. Whether you belong in there or not, your life is going to change. And I got put in that class, but for me, I improved. I got smart. I was the smartest one in that class. I had hope for the first time in my life. We didn't read. We played putt-putt. We played miniature golf. Oh, by the way, how come these conventions never have a putt-putt tournament? I don't know where that came from, John. Go out and play 18 holes with him. I'm not going to drink. I want to tell you about my drinking experience. Should have been a warning. So now I'm a senior. I've gone through school 4 years. I had one experience where I'll tell you about. I'm not playing the victim card, and I'll tell you why in case you're new. Victims don't get to stay sober. Period. As long as I'm living in my past, I've got absolute certainty and fear about the future. My day is shot. I don't have a chance. And so I can't play the victim. I have to deal with that. And thank God AA steps 4 through 9 are the solution to my being a victim in the past. But I was. I remember I was in school and these three wrestlers grabbed three of us kids from the special class, and they locked each one of us in a hall locker on Friday night, and they didn't find us till Monday morning. Now, I want you to hear something that's true. I never stopped screaming for one waking moment. When I was awake, I was screaming. 2.5 days. I'm screaming the top of my lungs out, and there ain't nobody there to hear me, except them other two kids locked in those other two lockers. Now, those other two kids came out with the same Down syndrome they went in with. But I came out just a bit different. I had to come to AA to find out what my problem was. I had a resentment. And I nursed it. I didn't get revenge until after Vietnam. That clues you in. Tom found out. Tom was a guy that felt sorry for me. He was kind of my chaperone through school, my protector. And Tom found those three wrestlers, and he beat the holy bejeebers out of them. And Tom became my best friend. That's where I started lying. I started telling Tom they were picking on me again, just to watch him go beat him up again. And once wasn't enough for me. Okay, moving on. I'm a senior now. I've never drank Pepsi Cola. That's it. And I'm in a group home. I'm out of the insanity of the violence of that alcoholic home, and now I'm into a different kind of insanity in a group home back then. We're not even going to go into that. It's a different story, different place. But I got put into a group home. And except for the booze, that made, and there were no guns, but it made the madness look tame. I'm a senior. I'm going to graduate high school from the special class. Tom takes me to the senior dance. I'm the only one in the class that gets to go to the senior dance. I've never been to a senior dance. I didn't know about girls. I didn't know we got girls in the special class, but we don't know they're girls. We don't know what they are. And they take me to the senior dance, and I'm standing up against the wall watching everybody do what they're doing. I've never danced in my life. I played putt-putt and chew books. And Tom comes walking up on me, and he's got his hand tucked inside his jacket. And he pulls out this brown bottle with a red, white, and blue label called Budweiser. He said, "Here, kid, drink this. It'll make you feel better." I'm a guzzler. Anybody else? I tasted after it hit down. I guzzled that entire bottle of Budweiser, let out a big old belch, and I said, "Tom, that tastes terrible. I want a Pepsi-Cola." Tom says this to me, "It's okay, kid. Have another one. You'll get used to it." Now, Tom, to this very day, is a social drinker. To what I know, in all these years I've known Tom, he's only been drunk once in his life. That was enough for him. True story. From his mouth to my ear. Here's what Tom meant by get used to it. Apparently, he got into his dad's booze, got drunk, got disorientated, had to go to the bathroom, thought he was in the bathroom. He was in the bedroom. And he peed in his dresser. And he said he almost went crazy trying to flush it. And his mom made him do the laundry. And he says, "I will never do that again." And to the best of my knowledge, he never has. That's what he meant when he told me I'd get used to it. But you see, something happened to and for me that didn't happen to Tom. Somewhere between 4 and 5 Budweisers that night, I got so good looking I couldn't stand it. And I wasn't reading. My IQ shot up to about 240 if it goes that far. And I knew I could dance. I just intuitively knew. I looked out on the dance floor and eyeballed me a blue-eyed blonde. Had no idea I'd need freedom from blondage. I'd overheard someone say, "Can I cut in?" So I'm a word stealer. So I walked right up to her. The confidence was just, I didn't know it was confidence, but it was beaming. Well, I asked her, I said, "Can I cut in?" I got my most weenie voice out there. "Can I get in?" She recognized me from the special class. I didn't know that then. I found out later. She recognized me from the special class. And she gave me a sympathy dance. And then she danced with me again. And you know what? She started to like me. She totally ditched the date that brought her to the senior dance, and she stayed with me the rest of the evening. Found out later that night sex meant 2 people. You know, when you wear a helmet and don't ride a bike, that's exciting. She ruined my sex life. I've been having sex since I was 13. I thought I was good at it. She complicated the entire procedure. Tom told me the next day I had a great time. He said I left different and I came in. I thought, okay. First time I drank, right? Blackout. A few weeks later, we were seven weeks away from graduation. About 5 weeks later, I got called into the principal's office. I didn't know why. In that principal's office was my mom and dad. Now, my mom and dad don't do the PTA. They rob the PTA. And there, over there, I saw Bonnie in the corner. I thought, because I hadn't seen her since that dance. And then I saw her mom and dad. Yeah. I had no idea what was Clue. I was retarded. And I remember walking that. Her dad's mouth was attached to that doorknob. Because the minute I walked in, he started coming out of his chair. My dad started coming out of his chair. My mom was starting to cut off my dad because she's going to get to him first. It's like the preliminaries for Jerry Springer. All of a sudden, he started screaming and pointing at me. "Are you the boy that had sex with my daughter? Are you the boy?" And I looked at him and I said, and then I said something I never should have said. I said, "I want to do it again." Because I didn't See nothing wrong with it. They weren't teaching us sex ed in the special class. They didn't want us to have any clue about reproduction. He says, you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life. Now, I'm 17. She's 16. In the state of Illinois, that's called statutory rape. And he said, you're going to do 20 years to life. And I said, even if you're retarded? By the way, that's a clue. So we got married. You see, in 1967, parents didn't let their pregnant daughters go unwed. That's just the way it was. That's I either marry her or he shoot me. It's going to be one or the other. So we couldn't get married in the state of Illinois because they were going to prosecute me back then. But instead, we went to Palmyra, Missouri, where you can marry your you can get married. Wonder why I never get to talk in Missouri. We got married. I want you to picture that. I've drank one time. I'm going to be a dad. I'm married to a woman I can't even remember. And I'm graduating a retarded class. My dad says, we got to get you out of town. Now, there's a little conflict going on in Southeast Asia. So my dad takes me to the Marine recruiter, and he sees my special education affidavits and says, next door to the Air Force. So my dad took me to the Air Force. This is 1967, 68. There's a little conflict going on. They want bodies. The Air Force said, send him next door to the Army. The Army said, the Navy wants him. I went over to the Navy and I took their test. And I want you to know I qualified for almost any A school the Navy's got. I can't tell you how that happened. But I enlisted in the Navy. And shortly thereafter, I went to boot camp at Great Lakes Naval Training Center. And then they put a rifle in my hand. And from there, I got sent to Coronado Island. From Coronado Island, I got sent to Treasure Island. From Treasure Island, San Francisco, I got sent to Vietnam. I came back from Vietnam. I only drank one flipping time. One freaking time. And it's just beer. Come back in Vietnam. I only get 4 letters from my wife the whole time I'm gone. It was killing me. Mail call, no mail. Mail call, no mail. Mail call, no mail. And I'm not blaming, I'm just reporting. So when I got back, I found out she had moved in with my neighbor. He was taking care of her and paying her way, and she divorced me and married him. And apparently, right after our divorce, I was still in the Navy. I was on leave, and we got divorced. And I came back, and I don't remember this, but apparently I went into this restaurant drunk, this made-right restaurant, and this waitress was there. I guess she took a liking to me. And I told her my sob story, apparently, and I don't remember anything for 5 days. I'm in a blackout. I don't remember. But I do want to tell you about a vow that I took with myself, because remember I told you, I never had a problem with God. I really wanted to live my life by those commandments. I really did. I just couldn't. And I couldn't explain that to myself. But the one thing I was never going to do was cheat on a woman. Never. If I do that, I will commit suicide. Because I've seen so much of that, and the hurt, and the agony. So here I'm driving my car, I'm on Liberty, and I look to my right and there's a woman in my car. And I do not know who she is. You ever tried to go through your Rolodex of memory, and first you got to find out where you are, then you got to know who they are. And then I notice she's wearing a wedding ring. And I think, what am I doing with a married woman? I'm telling you, I'm already plotting my suicide. I'm keeping that pact. And as I'm thinking about what am I going to do? What am I doing with a married woman? She looks at me and she says, what's the matter, honey? I said to her, who are you? That's exactly what I said. Who are you? She hit me. She said, what do you mean, who am I? I said, who are you? And don't ever hit me again. She starts crying. I found out we got married. We drove to Palmyra, Missouri. Apparently, it was my idea. I'm in a blackout 5 days. I'm married again. I've drank twice. It isn't going good. We both agreed it must be God's will. That's why when someone I sponsor tells me they think they know what God's will is, we're having a conversation. Because I have experience. Well, I signed up for another tour of duty in Vietnam. I didn't like her. It only took about 2 weeks of R&R with her to know I was going back to Vietnam where I felt safer. I came back from Vietnam, and you know what? I want to tell you about this experience. Minutes later, I'm debilitated. I'm sleeping in a dumpster behind Larry's Oasis. I weigh 146 pounds. Right now, I weigh 260 pounds. My psych report read 146 pounds. I was skin and bones. I used to lie and say, I didn't lie. I just used to say I didn't have any teeth. But the truth is I had 4 or 5 stragglers strategically located, so I'd whistle when the wind came through. And I'm laying in this dumpster, and you know, it's hard to conceptualize in your mind the idea that I've got 8 medals. I have a presidential citation, not to CMH. I have a presidential citation, a paper 4 of us got for what we did. And I'm in a dumpster. How does that happen? And now I drank a handful of times. Why would I keep going back? And all I drink is beer and fine wine. Ripple? Some of us are old enough to remember Ripple. How many of us are old enough to remember Ripple? Thank you! I know you're in the back nearest the bathroom, aren't you? If you're under 40, you never drank Ripple, and I'm going to tell you why. The EPA came into existence. And they closed that chemical plant down. To tell you how bad it is, they still make Cisco and Thunderbird. Ripple. It'll give you a condition you might not have heard about here in Grand Junction. It's called alcoholic terminal diarrhea. I swear before God, I had diarrhea for 6 years. I came into AA with that condition, had my own table at the group. I didn't think it was ever going to stop. When you've had diarrhea for 6 years, you got to have good decision-making skills. And you got to have split-second timing, of which I had neither. Ergo, my own table at the group. I also like Boone's Farm, Strawberry Hill. I knew you guys back there, you're in trouble, I'll tell you. Little mad dog Deucey Deucey. So there I am in that dumpster. I can't tell you how I got there from there. I never woke up one day and said, I want to be retarded, I want to be abused, I want to be beaten. And then I turned around and become the abuser and the beater, and I never wanted that. How did I end up in that dumpster? And it's Halloween. It's October 31st, 1972. Creeping into the morning of November 1st. I remember it because I tried to get some free drinks out of the Oasis because it was Halloween. And you're talking about somebody who fit right in. That early morning, I heard a knock on my dumpster lid. And I was home. Alone. Some of you girls are pretty, you have a lot of expectations of a guy. I could always get Dirty Sally to come home, but I couldn't get her to come in the door. I'll tell you. She looked at my little abode and she said, oh no. No. So I'm there and I'm wondering who's out there. I know it's not the dumpster pickup man. Because I know when you're sleeping in a dumpster, you better know the route. Because they don't wake you up. By the way, just as a side note, a lot of my Skid Row friends died when they came out with that top loader. I got sober while they still had the back loader, where they dump you out, they make fun of you, but they take you out. When they come up with that top loader, a lot of us got crushed and killed. That's the truth. then the city of Moline enacted a policy where the garbage men had to come and check the dumpster before they would dump it in because it became a popular thing. If you go to the Salvation Army, you got to sing. At least I didn't have to sing in a dumpster. You know what I mean? Well, I looked out there to see who it was, and it was my dad. Now, I want to tell you about the last experience I had with my dad. I'd come back from Vietnam. I was unpredictable. I'm not blaming Vietnam. Vietnam did not do this to me. I already had an emotional predisposition that was unmanageable and untenable. Vietnam just put a further spin on it. That's all it did. I'm not blaming Vietnam. But I was having trouble. And the last time I saw my dad was when he took me to court. My dad got a restraining order against me. I couldn't go near my own mother for something I'm not going to tell you about. He even included my ex-wife and my current wife. I also couldn't go near my kids. It's never been done before. Happy day. And he told me that if I go near any of them, that he will put a bullet in my brain. And see, my dad's that guy. My dad would do that. My dad was a guy that kept his word. He would tell you once, if you do that again, I'm knocking you to the ground. 10 years could pass. You do it, you're going to the ground. And he's going to say, I warned you. Like you're supposed to remember for 10 years. But that was the way he was. Now, I honored him for that. So I expected a gun. But there was a look in my dad's eye I didn't understand. I'd never seen it before. I come to find out later my dad went off and joined a cult called AA. They give signals. You going over there tonight? See you around the tables. By the way, they had round tables back then. You know why? So the devil couldn't corner you. My dad looks down at me and he says, Wayne, do you want to come home with me tonight? My dad was reaching out to me, wasn't he? My dad was sober. And he says, Wayne, do you want to come home with me tonight? And I looked around my little room and I said, no thanks, Dad, I'm doing fine. And you know, as well as I know, if you're alcoholic like me, you know I was telling the truth. I haven't found a bottom yet that I can't adjust to. Isn't that amazing? I can adjust to pain and tragedy and accept it and live in it. But I can't adjust to good stuff the same way. It's in my DNA, it appears. But I really was comfortable there. I knew the streets. I knew the rest of the bums. By the way, we weren't homeless. We were bums. They called us bums. So me and the rest of the bums, we looked out for each other. But my dad left right away. He didn't argue with me, didn't debate with me, didn't try to talk me into it, which I thought was rather insincere. I assumed he went home to get the gun. You know, and there's a part of me who wanted to stay there and find out. There's a part of me that didn't have the courage to do it myself. And I was hoping my dad would come put me out of my misery. I just didn't have the guts to do it. I waited a little while, and then I started thinking, he might come back and shoot me. Now, I don't know how you can have those two thoughts at the same time. Maybe it's the pain-pleasure principle. I don't know. But I bailed out of that dumpster. And as life would have it, as God would have it, if you will, I went on that walk of walks that every man and woman in this program has walked, whether you're an Al-Anon, AA, Al-Anon, Alateen, GANA, I don't care what A. Now, your bottom might not have started from a dumpster. It might have started from that Cadillac you parked on the front porch. It might have started from that jail cell. Or it might have started in that closet you passed out in hoping he or she wouldn't come home and find you. Bottom's relative to the individual, and it's an internal thing. Bottom is internal. It's not about location. It's about the internal, how much more can I possibly stand? I jumped out of that dumpster, and I come walking across Harvey's restaurant at the foot of 34th Street and 4th Avenue, Moline, Illinois. It was an all-night mom-and-pop coffee. How many of you remember those truck driver coffee shops where you go in there and get a cup of coffee for a dime? Remember they had those malt shop stools that wiggled when you couldn't sit? They couldn't tell you was drunk because they moved anyway. Well, I come walking by this Harvey's restaurant, and I looked in there, and I saw this 800-year-old woman very slowly wiping down. I have no idea this woman owns the restaurant. I have no idea this woman got called into work because her two third-shift waitresses called in Halloween sick. And rather than close, she came in and kept it open. How would I know that? I just saw an 800-year-old woman and knew I could work her. I'm a worker among bums. I go walking in the front door of that restaurant. My odor hits her before I do. I sit down on the stool closest to the cash register for some strange reason. And she looks up and a smile. Now, how many people do you suppose were smiling when they looked at me? A grin came across her face. She brings me over a glass of water, a cup of coffee, and she says, "Hi, sweetie, what can I do for you?" I'm going to have to start over here. I was ready for you. So I had to catch up. I started telling her story. I'm not going to tell you tonight. It's not the right forum. It's my fifth step. But I started telling her things in hopes of a free meal that I was afraid to tell my sponsor before he'd judge me. But I started telling her about that home. I told her about some of the things that happened in detail. Alligator tears were coming down her face. I told her about the retarded class. I told her about some of the things that happened in that group home. I told her about Vietnam. I told her about... She's just crying alligator tears and bringing me more coffee. I figured I got her. You know, here's an interesting thing about you, Al-Anon women. You don't wear a badge at work identifying yourself. You see, she wasn't crying because of my story. She'd heard it many times before. She was crying because her husband Harvey was having a hard time staying sober. And he needed a wet one to work with. And guess who got picked? So she took me, she kept me there. I thought I was working her. You see, she knew something that I didn't know. Harvey needed me more than I needed him. Harvey needed somebody. And so she kept me there. And on the November 2nd, Harvey comes in. And he says, "I heard you need some help." And what I heard was money, food, cigarettes. That's what I heard. He shook my hand and there's a coin in his hand. You know, he's giving me the bum's handshake. And it was a big coin. I knew it wasn't a silver dollar. It was brass. Silver dollars aren't brass. He says, "Now take a look at that coin." I looked at it and it had 2 A's on it. It didn't mean a thing to me. 2 A's. He says, "Turn it over." You know how they are. So I humored the old buzzard, turned it over. I mean, I want a cigarette. I want a tailor-made. So I turned it over and it's a stupid prayer. So I scanned it. It said, "God grant me." Now, anything that starts out, "God grant me," has got to be good. Because I'm going to get something. But what followed "God grant me" didn't mean spit to me. Didn't say nothing about money, food, or tailor-made cigarettes. Harvey says, "You take that coin tomorrow down to 410 16th Street, about noontime. There's going to be some friends of mine there. You tell them Harvey sent you. They're going to help you. And I'll catch up later on." He says, "When you get there, there'll be a light bulb hanging on a cord. If that light's on, you go in. They'll be expecting you." Ladies and gentlemen, if he'd have told me I'm an alcoholic, or if he'd have told me I was going to AA, I would have never went. Because I'm not an alcoholic. I have psychiatric issues. But I know that. I've been psychiatrically institutionalized 17 times. I want you to know that. I liked it there. You know, given the way I drank, the way I acted, the way I looked, the way I smelled, and the amount of teeth I had, I couldn't get a date to save my life on the street. But you put me in a co-ed psych ward. I'm a pretty charming fella. And if she's taking Thorazine, I can catch up. I got that address. It's in the basement. I spotted the light bulb, and Harvey said if it was on, go in. I'm kind of anal. Anybody else? Anal retentive? You get locked onto something, that's it? Well, the light wasn't on. It was flickering. It was flickering. On and off, on and off, on and off. So I'm out there trying to will it to stop. Stay on. I'm hungry. All of a sudden, I'm going like this. And I can't go in. The light won't stop. I lost my mind. I didn't go in. I couldn't do it. Harvey didn't give me a contingency plan. So I went to Larry's Oasis, mooshed me a few Budweisers, got loaded. Determined now they owe me. You know how we are. So I went flying back there that night, interested interestingly enough, it was about 8 o'clock. Now I don't care if that's lights on or gone. I'm going in. They owe me. And I'm going in like a man, loud and proud. I went charging through the basement doorway, failing to notice the door header's 5'10"-ish. I'm 6'3"-ish. I swear to God, I ran head first into that door header. The impact lifted me off of my feet. And I literally slid into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And inside that door was a round table, with 6 or 7 old men that must have been talking about dying. I slid right between two of them. And the meanest, most evil man I've ever met in my life stood up over me. And he went just like this. And then he growled. They growled at you back then. He goes, slide right in here, you big dummy. We got a wrench to fit every nut that comes in the door. And by the looks of you, it's going to have to be an adjustable wrench. I'm thinking if I can ever get up here, I'm going to kill you, old man. And then he introduces himself. He holds out his hand to pick me up off the floor. And he says, my name's Barney. I never asked, didn't care. And then right away he says, and I'm an alcoholic. And I thought, well, I'm a personality disorder, so what? I trumped you, pal. I got 17 of those diagnoses. Got the DSM-3 covered. They had to come out with a DSM-5 to catch up. And then he says, and I'm going to be your sponsor. Now, I've been in AA 13 seconds. I know his name. I know his problem. Now he's making it mine. And for the next 5 years and 5 days, I followed him around like a little puppy and didn't know why, and I drank the entire time. I could not drink, folks. I've got an allergy in my body, an obsession in my mind that defeats any explanation, any definition. 5 years and 5 days. Oh, I could go 2 or 3 days, but I wasn't interested in it. All I drank was beer. When Big Book Bob Charles talked, I had to have a drink. I just had to. I'd have to go outside. You know, he'd start thumping that big book. It's in the book. It's in the book. It's in the book. What's in the book? Read it. You'll find out. Shut up. It's in the book. 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 I can still see him. He's like the bobblehead Big Book. It's in the book. It's in the book. It's in the book. I hated his guts. I understand why some people shoot their Big Book. I swear to God. I prayed for Bob, but he wouldn't drink. Oh, my God. That's when ABC stood for ashtrays, brooms, and chairs. Oh, my God. Man, I'd do all that stuff and go drink. I had to. I couldn't stand to be sober around these happy people. And I wanted to tell you, Barney was 62 years old. And he was the youngest in the group. Curly was 84. Curly. Atlee. 85 years old. And Gentle Ben. Misnomer. And Tiny Enfield, 6'11". It's like you people are strange. You're weird. God, I hated them. And I found out you had rules. Or you don't have rules. So I broke them. Remember one time I walked into a meeting drunk. Late, obviously, because I come late, leave early. So I came in late, walked right in front, right down the middle of the aisle, like a big shot, you know. And this guy gets up and he says, you got to sit down. You're disturbing the meeting. I looked at him and I said, I don't want to. Another guy got up and says, you got to sit down and shut up. You're disturbing this meeting. Something came over me. All the spirituality left. And I said, I don't have to. Another guy gets up and says, you got to leave. We're not kicking you out of AA, but you're not staying here. We have a right to a peaceful meeting, and you ain't peaceful and you ain't listening. So you got to leave right now. And I said, I don't have to. Another guy gets up and says, yes, you do. And I said to him, you can't make me. Yes, they can. You see that old boy right there? Don't hurt me now. About 4 guys his size. I don't know where the hell they got him. I think they went to detox because I never seen them before. And each one of them grabbed an arm and a leg. They threw me out the front door. I noticed my sponsor was holding it open. There's the hand of AA. And I landed on the sidewalk, and I heard my sponsor yell out, "Keep coming back!" I did. Now I'm going to tell you something I'm not proud of. This is not about me. This is about my sponsor's character. That's the only reason I tell this story. 4.5 years drunk, I come to a meeting, walk from over there to over here, and right where he's sitting was Barney. And I walked right past him, speaker speaking. And as I did, he whispered. I thought he yelled. "Dummy," I hurt my feeling. He says, "Do you know this program tends to work better if you don't drink?" Do you know I've been going to meetings for 4.5 years and I don't recall anybody ever talking about not drinking? I heard him talk about drinking. I never heard nobody. What I heard him say was, you can't drink no matter what. You got to stop. Now watch who you say you can't drink no matter what to. Because if you're an alcoholic of my type, you might get a bad reaction. I got about 20 feet past him over to the other side of the room, and I heard him say it. You have to quit. My mind exploded. I reached down into my boot. I pulled a .357 out. I pointed it right at my sponsor's face, and I fired a round off. I'm not proud of that. I missed him 6 inches high. Old Barney's 5'6". It's a good thing, because I fired right over his head. I vaguely remember the group tackling me. And to make it worse, I had my K-bar in the other boot, and I pulled it out, and I nicked my sponsor's throat. And I came to the next morning at Franciscan Mental Health Center. I was strapped down on 6-point leather restraints to a steel bed in the center of a padded room. I was black and blue from head to toe from a little AA group therapy. They broke things on me I didn't know I had. By the way, it's only been 37 years almost, not one amends yet. I might add. I had a visitor the next morning. You know who it was? Barney. I couldn't get rid of him for nothing. He was like a maggot on a bad piece of meat, I'll tell you. He's walking around my little bed, and I ain't going nowhere. He says to me, "Dummy." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "There's something wrong with you." He said, "You've done it this time." He said, "You know they're talking about keeping you and studying you a while." And then he said what I'll never forget. I hope I never forget it. He says, "But you know what? If they let you out of here, I'm not sure they're going to. But if they do, I'll come get you. And if you do what I do and what we did and still do, I believe you can recover too." Ooh, that put me in fear of him. I thought, "Oh, what's wrong with you? What do you want?" I became scared of him, and I'm trying to make him scared of me. And to make a long story short, he went to the Board of Psychiatry, told him he'd take responsibility for me. That would not happen today, I assure you. Could have only happened in 1977. Just so happens. And a few months later, after I'd gone through some insulin shock therapy, after they stopped doing electric shock therapy, they picked up on insulin shock therapy. They released me to Barney. And Barney met me at the hospital. He didn't take me. He says, "You know where the meeting's at. If you want it, I'll be there." And then he drove off. And I went and got drunk. And on night of November 7th, 1977, Barney says to me, "Think you can stay sober tonight? If you can, I'll meet you at the noon meeting tomorrow. Why don't you help me set up for the meeting?" Now, a little side note, he's sponsoring a new guy named Tom. Another Tom. But I don't like this Tom. This Tom needs to die. Tom's got 14 days. I know. He says it every day. "I'm Tom. I have 3 days." Another bobblehead on the way. "I'm Tom. I have 5 days." Barney's my sponsor. That got my attention. Barney's been my sponsor. I'm territorial. I started plotting Tom's death. Well, to make a long story short, I ended up meeting Barney. I made it till 7 a.m. or thereabouts without a drink that night. I went up to Belgian Village in Moline, stole a 6-pack of warm Budweiser. I want to tell you how lame my bottom was, experientially. I knew he'd get there about 10 o'clock, so I got there at 9 o'clock. And I'm sitting on the front steps of my home group drinking Budweiser, warm Budweiser. I got 3 cans drank. I am going to drink the other 3, no doubt about it. Here comes Barney, just like clockwork, about 10 o'clock, walking up the sidewalk like he owns it. You know how they are. He walks up on me, and he doesn't look at the beer. Instead, he does something worse. He looks me right in the eye, causing me to notice the beer. I didn't feel bad about it till he came. And then he says, "Dummy." I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Why don't you come in and help me set up for the meeting?" Never said a thing about the beer. Not a thing. "Why don't you come in and help me set up for the meeting?" I didn't want to go in there because Tom's in there already doing step work. You know, he's working the steps, I have 13 days and a big book. Tom is at the coffee bar working the staff. I don't know why, but I hid the other 3 cans of beer in the bush. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I didn't want Tom to beat me to my sponsor. I don't know. Maybe I wanted Barney to like me, and I knew if I'd go help him set up, he'd be nice to me. I don't know what it was. It's one of those mysteries that I'll never have an answer to. All I know is I hid the other 3 cans of beer in the bush and helped Barney set up that meeting. I did notice Tom didn't help set up. He was too busy working the steps. I told Barney I prayed for him, but I don't believe in Barney's God no more. He says, "Why not?" I said, "Because I prayed to your God, and he don't answer prayers." He says, "Really? What'd you pray for?" I said, "I prayed for Tom to die." He said, "Why don't you try a different prayer?" I said, "I did." "Well, what'd you try?" I said, "Well, I prayed for him to drink." God, I hated Tom. I wanted him gone. So we get all set up, and I sit down in the shoebox of AA. That's where the old-timers put the slippers, runners, and AA loafers, so we don't infect the new people. So I'm sitting in my shoebox, and I'm watching Tom and Barney work the steps. All of a sudden, the front door blew open. And this drunk, he was so drunk, I could smell him. Now, bear in mind, I'm not drunk. And I haven't been drunk. I've been locked up. I've had a couple of drunks, but not many. And I'm having a lucid interval. I've only had 3. I'm alert to time and temperature. I see this guy come flying in the front door, and he did a full body flop and stayed there. We figured his wife did a drive-by. He could not get up. And I saw Barney and Tom simultaneously go just like this. And I thought, oh, Tom can't have him, that's for sure. And Barney can't have him because then it's 2 against 1. I better do something. I leapt out of my shoebox. And I got the, we'll call him Jimmy. That was his name. Barney was so enamored by the fact I came racing out of my chair, he sat there with Tom to see what was going to happen. So I got to him, and I tried to pick him up off the floor, and he's so drunk he can't stand. I pull him up off the floor, and I don't know what to say. I haven't talked to anybody for 5 years and 5 days. I don't know what to say. I've never uttered the words, "I'm an alcoholic," because I know, like Barney did, that means I join. So I ain't never saying I'm an alcoholic. I don't know what to say to the guy. So I pick him up, and he's wobbling, and I want to talk to him. So remember, I'm a word stealer. So I said, "Hi, I'm Wayne B." He goes like this. Okay. And then I said, I didn't know what to say. And then Barney's words came into my head. I'm an alcoholic. No! I didn't mean to say it. I didn't mean to say I'm an alcoholic. Now he knows I'm an alcoholic. Now I've joined. So I thought, well, what the hell? And I'm going to be your sponsor. I don't even know what that is. But that's what Barney said. He goes like this. "What's a sponsor?" I go, "What are you asking me for?" All I said was, "Shut up." Well, Barney heard me say, "I'll be your sponsor." And at that point, he left Tom alone at the coffee bar. Now, if I'd have known that's all it would take to get him away from Tom, I'd have sponsored somebody 13 days ago. Barney's heading right for me. And I know what he's going to do. I've been around 5 years. I wasn't drunk the whole time. He's going to poach my sponsee. because I've already taken possession of Jim. He's mine. I'm fixing this broken pup. I pulled him behind me so Barney couldn't get at him. I did. Barney gets up into my ear and he whispers, "Dummy." I thought, talk to me like that in front of my sponsee? He said, "Dummy," he says, "do you mind if I co-sponsor him?" I thought, what? Co-sponsor? I didn't have a co-sponsor. Tom ain't got no co-sponsor. No. Of course, I said yes. Now, you know as well as I do, Barney could have easily said, "I'm taking him." But you see, Barney's one of them old school guys. He knows my life depends on Jimmy. It wasn't about being an excellent sponsor or knowing more about the book or anybody else. See, Barney knew God was in charge. And this was all happening without my doing whatsoever. Barney knew somehow God had something to do with this. So Barney wasn't about to interfere. But what he did say was, if you two clowns expect to stay sober, I doubt that you will. You two together, it's going to be fun to watch. Popcorn and Raisinets. He says, if you two clowns expect to stay sober, go grab newcomers and bring them here. Grab them, grab them, grab them. Now watch what you say to someone who's anally inclined. I heard him say, grab them. So me and Jimmy have been sober a little while now, and he's got one more than me, and that's not right. And I remember sitting in the group. I'm not trying to be tough. Don't get me the wrong way. It's just my mind is maddened. I looked at Jimmy and I said, the next guy that comes in the door is mine. You move, you die. I'm not trying to be tough. I'm just telling you the way it was a few years back. So the door flew open a little while later, and this guy with deer in the headlights come in. I knew he was new. He had the look, you know what I mean? And I looked at Jim, and he goes like this. He don't see nothing. I got up out of my chair with good intentions. I had my hand out. I was going to say, I'm Wayne. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to AA. That's what I was going to say. But right as I reached out, Barney's voice went off in my head. Grab him! Grab him! Grab him! And I reached around. And I grabbed him by the throat. And I pinned him up against the wall. And this is exactly what I said. Listen, asshole! If you want what I got, you got to do what I did. I'd heard that. And he goes like this. Let me go. I'm going to clean it up. You ain't got a gall darn thing I want. And I thought, well, let go and let God. So I let him go. I found out he had 11 years. He was having a bad day. You know, I don't know what to tell you about. I know I'm a much more effective sponsor today. I mean, I worked the steps. I still work the steps, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I needed Jimmy. Jimmy saved my life. Do you know last November 8th, me and Jimmy both celebrated 35 years? You know, and Jimmy, he's one of those, he's not like me. I'm one of those Bill W. type drunks. Jimmy was, when he got sober, he was a lot like Dr. Bob. He kind of came out of it, and he stayed that way. And Jimmy never had so much as emotional fart in a windstorm ever. Well, that was a really terrible analogy, wasn't it? Yeah, it works for me. Jimmy became mayor of a city, got married, has some kids, and he just loves AA, and he doesn't go anywhere. He does not envy me. He does not want to do what I do in AA. He's got a great life. Sponsors one or two guys. That is not my case. I'm just a little bit more of an motorboat. Okay. Now, take you back. My dad's sober over 10 years. I didn't know that. And he got wind I was sober, and he invited me home for Thanksgiving dinner. I was sober 16 days. I didn't want to go. I was scared. I'd done something so terrible that I didn't think my mother could ever forgive me. She had every right not to. You understand? And but my sponsor coerced me, made me, told me, forced me, didn't suggest to go. I remember getting to my mom's house, and I was just so impish. And as I walked into her kitchen, she's at the stove boiling turkey she's already cooked. And the reason she's boiling it is because Barney told her that my mouth was bad. And this woman that had every right to hate my guts was boiling turkey for me because I couldn't chew it. Isn't that something? My dad met me, and I heard what I've always wanted to hear from my dad. Come on in and watch the game with me. Watching a football game with my dad. Me and my dad. And then halftime came and a commercial came on TV for a new beer, new brand. Miller Lite. Brand new. It was her big coming out party. I remember the jingle. Tastes great, last filling. My dad looked at me. I'll never forget it. He said, surely, Wayne, that beer can't hurt us. And I said, surely not. Because I want to have a beer with my dad. I've got 16 days. What do I know? He's the old timer. We left and went to a liquor store and got a 12-pack of Miller Lite and brought it home. My mom just sat and started weeping in the corner of the kitchen. My dad opened up a can of Miller Lite without a second thought and drank it down. I opened up a can. I'm so glad it wasn't Budweiser. And I looked at that, and I remember telling Barney, for once in my life, I gave him my word I would call him before this time. Before. And I did. I called Barney. I said, Barney, I'm with my dad. My dad's had a beer. I want to have one with him. He says, okay, I'll be right over. What does that mean? But he hung up before he could ask me if I could. Does that mean can I drink it? So I sat there and stared at that beer till my sponsor got there quick. I didn't even know he knew where my mom and dad lived. You know how these spies in AA are. He comes into the living room and he sees my dad's already got 2 or 3 empty cans. And so he ignores my dad. He looks at me and he sees I've got a death grip on that beer. He knows I haven't drank it yet. And he says, come with me. We're going to go for a ride. I said, okay. And I left the beer there out of respect for him. He drove me around for an hour. Not once did he talk about me not drinking. Not once. You know what he talked about for an hour? He told me how much he loved AA. He even lied and said he loved AA because of me. I know they teach him that in sponsor school. They say that, you know, yeah, we got a whopper here. Yeah. And then an hour later, he drops me off. He says, you know what? If you don't drink, I'll pick you up in the morning, and I'll take you to a convention. Just so happens there was a convention in town. First Quad City Roundup. And he says, he never made fun of me for smelling. Nothing. He did say this, do you mind if I buy you a new set of clothes? You're somewhat of a distraction, and AA is a program of attraction. So I said, sure. So he took me I thought he was going to Sears. We went to Salvation Army. And disco's out in New York. But it's in at the Salvation Army because they donated everything. Everything. Rows and rows and rows of lime green double knit polyester leisure suits. They're not in vogue in 77. Well, we bought one. Mine was really lime green, bright yellow lining with dark green tennis rackets. He bought me a shirt. I thought it was silk. It was brushed polyester. Bright yellow with animals in a straight band. Collars down to here and only 2 buttons and none were missing. We bought that. Made me wear a tie with it. He's one of them. And then he took me to the shoe department where the only gunboats they had in supply were a pair of black and brown box-toe Oxford platform disco shoes. We got out of there for $1.85. I went in there 6'3.5" and came out 6'8". He took me to that convention, stood me at the front door, and made me a greeter. I don't know why everybody laughed when they passed me. 6 members of AA gave up their thing. By the way, there's one of the speakers is always in LA on Thanksgiving, but for some reason, they all came together at this one. Maybe it was God. I'd like to be self-centered enough to think it was about me. I don't know. But the 6 members of AA that came to my hometown that weekend was a guy named Chuck C. And he had his wife Elsa with him. And a guy named Norm Elpy. A guy named Clancy I. A guy named Johnny H. Dottie Shore from Radford. And Tom Brady Jr. from Charlotte, North Carolina. They got me. That's why I'm here tonight. That's why I don't say no. They got me. I can't tell you how they got me, but they got me. I know Clancy really made me mad. He made fun of me. He laughed at my suit. I mean, he made sure I knew he was laughing at my suit. He said it from the podium. Chuck, he goes like this. Dee! Dee! Norm laughed so fast I wasn't sure. Dottie Shore, I felt her lips moving in laughter when she kissed me on the forehead. And when Tom whisked by and started laughing after he got past me, I turned to my sponsor, and I think it might have been my first honest emotion. I looked at him, and I'm going to clean it up. I said, God damn it, Barney! Are they laughing at me? And he looks at me and he goes, well, yeah. You are a sight to behold. He says, you know what? I said, what? He says, if you ever learn to laugh at yourself, you'll never be left unamused. And then Saturday night, come on, you know my body still stank. It did. Just because I had clean clothes on. You don't get that off you just because you're sober 18 days. He gave me his banquet ticket. He was at Chuck C's table. And you may not know this. Some of you do. It was the weekend he made amends to his son, Richard. It was the weekend he flew Richard in from London to Moline to come to that convention. And it was that Saturday night that Chuck made amends to Richard for alienating him because he was gay. And I had no clue what was going on. I was just busy trying not to show my no teeth. And then all of a sudden, Chuck looks at me and says, kid, you know what your problem is? I said, I have several. He says, you only got one. I thought. And then he goes, whenever he talked, he would always go, tee. He could not do it. He was powerless. He says, you know what your problem is? I said, I have several. He said, no, you only have one. I'm starting to think he's laughing at me. He needs to die. He says, your only problem in life is your conscious separation from your loving Father God. And then he turned away and never talked to me again. Got back to Richard. I thought the guy was crazy. Okay. So here it is. My sobriety date is November 8, 1977. I haven't ate booze, pills, powders, potions, or lotions that unnecessarily alter my emotions. I have dated some mind and mood altering women, however. And I attribute it to my sponsor loving AA so much that he was able to deal with me. And he was my sponsor for 29 years, 5 months, and 14 days. And the day he died, well, I will never forget it. I say his name every day. A day doesn't go by I don't talk about Barney to somebody. I'll even talk to strangers in Starbucks. We'll start a conversation. I'll say, yeah, a guy named Barney. They won't even know who I'm talking about. I don't care. I'm keeping him with me. To kind of wrap it up. You know, I have kids. I've estranged from them. I made amends. 2 of my kids saw things they deemed unforgivable, and they still haven't come around. I made amends. I sent them cards. They didn't want nothing to do with me. My other 3 were okay. Took a while. But you see, a lot of the things I did, I was stone cold sober. They couldn't rationalize that as being part of the disease. I couldn't even rationalize it as part of the disease until I came into AA, started working these steps, started talking to other members, and found out that that's all part of the disease of alcoholism. Because I'm here to tell you that if I'd have been in my right mind, I wouldn't have done any of the things I did. None. Because I'm not that kind of guy today. And it took a long time sober. I want you to know that. But it's because of my insistency and my consistency on being committed to Alcoholics Anonymous that that's the truth. My youngest son, you know, I got divorced, by the way, when I was 5 years sober. I don't say this to tarnish my ex-wife. It's just the way it was. I was 5 years sober, and I came home from an AA dance, and I found my wife in bed with my sponsee. And apparently he wanted what I had. Looked like he's willing to go any lengths to get it, too. I didn't know if I could stay sober through that. I had a convention that weekend. Isn't that interesting? When you're of service, my fears, many of them have fallen away, but I want you to know something. They had to be prepared to fall away. And I'll tell you how my fears have been prepared. As cheesy as this sounds, they've been broken down on the anvils of AA service. and fallen away. Almost every service commitment I've ever taken on has made me challenge another fear. And had I said no to those service commitments, I might still be that frightened little boy I was when I came to AA. Thank God for service. My youngest son, I got about 4 minutes left. Ain't that right, Taper? Okay. My son's mother, I was so in love with her. I was. I wanted to marry her. And we were engaged. And we found out she was pregnant. And then one day she come up to me, and I have her permission to tell this story. I want you to know that. She come in, could you give me my diamond back? And I said, what? I didn't say, did I do something, because I knew I hadn't. I said, what? She said, well, I have to tell you the truth. And I said, what's that? She says, well, when I was a young girl, I made my mind up I was going to marry a black man. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I can't marry you in good conscience. It's the most courageous thing I've ever seen. I didn't feel that way at the time. And she did. She married one of my sponsees named Charles. She liked my sponsees because they work. They got married. And I want to tell you, he took good care of my son. He helped my son grow up. He's a man of integrity. And I say that because recently my son got arrested. And I want to tell you, by the way, I don't have time to tell you that, but in my sobriety, believe it or not, I became a cop. You know, it's hard to become a cop when you've been arrested 9 times and psychiatrically institutionalized just 17. It's hard to become a cop unless you live in Iowa. There they consider it good experience. Well, to make a long story short, I made friends on the department. I stayed friends with people on the department. A year and a half ago, my son got arrested for a really bad felony. And I got a phone call from a guy that I used to be on the job with, getting ready to retire. Ryan says to me, Butler, I got your kid in my back seat. I owe you one. And, you know, being spiritual, he doesn't owe me nothing, but yes, he did. And he says, if you want, I'll kick him loose. I said, what'd he do? And he told me. And I said, don't you dare kick him loose. If you want to do me a favor, don't tell him I told you to take him. And make a long story short, he got arrested. That was the weekend they brought the H&I panel in. My son heard the message. Asked the panel leader to be his sponsor. And I want you to hear the twist of irony. I 12-stepped him 33 and a half years ago. Me and Jimmy did. And he's my son's sponsor now. And my son called me up and said, will you come home to Illinois and support me my first year? God, I was there in 3 days. I was. I left Florida and I got there. And last June 2nd, my son celebrated his year. And I want to tell you about that and I'm done. It's a miracle. I'm not the miracle. AA is the miracle. It's the producer of miracles. I took my son with his family to give him his cake. I want you to visualize this. Saturday night. I'm sitting here. Zach's sitting next to me. His mother's next to him. On this side is his sponsor, my sponsee, and then his stepdad number 1 and stepdad number 2, and I sponsor both of them. Isn't that great? And there's no fighting, no harsh words. Isn't that AA? And so I'll leave you with this thought. I love AA, and I don't want to spoil it by picking up a drink, but it's possible. It's possible. You could see me drunk again someday. So I'm going to stay with you as close as I can. And I'm going to keep saying yes to AA service as much as I possibly can. And I'm going to trust that my new employer will take care of me if I perform his work well. Thank you.